The shrill cry of a baby cuts through the pressurized calm of a transatlantic flight. This is not just any flight. It is a cage 30,000 feet in the air. This is not just any baby. He is the son of Dante Salvatore, the most feared man in New York, a man whose grief is as cold and sharp as his bespoke suit. The baby wails a beacon of human misery. And sitting just rows away, a struggling single mum, Claire Jensen, recognizes the sound, not just as a mother, but as a woman running for her life. What happens next will forever bind these two strangers, not by choice, but by an act so desperate, so intimate, it will rewrite their futures. The cabin of Alitalia's first-class suite, on flight AZ-611, non-stop from JFK to Rome Fiumicino, was a pressurized tomb of polite tension. The air, recycled and thin, carried the scent of expensive leather, spilled champagne, and a new pervasive odor, sour milk. At the center of this tension in seat 2A was Dante Salvatore. To the other passengers he was an annoyance. A devastatingly handsome man in a custom-tailored Brioni suit who, for all his apparent wealth, could not control his own child. To the flight crew he was a problem, a VVIP whose polite cold requests for more formula, a different bottle, a bassinet, had been met with increasing futility. To the man himself, this was a special kind of hell. Dante Salvatore did not do helplessness. He was a man who controlled shipping ports, politicians, and the silent, brutal underworld of New York's 5 boroughs. He could end a man's life with a single quiet phone call, but he could not silence the screams of his own 6-month-old son. Leo Salvatore had been crying for 1 hour and 27 minutes. Signore, perhaps some warm water? The flight attendant, a nervous woman named Sarah, offered her smile stretched thin. Dante's glare could freeze fire. You offered that over New Jersey. He has rejected it. Find something else. His voice was a low growl, a rumble of controlled violence that made the attendant flinch. Beside him, his bodyguard Marco sat like a mountain of tailored Armani. Marco, who had taken 3 bullets for Dante, who could dismantle a man in seconds, was currently pale and sweating as he tried fruitlessly to rock the screaming infant. Leo was having none of it. His tiny face was purple, his lungs testing the very limits of human endurance. "Give him to me." Dante snapped, his patience gone. He took the baby. Leo's screams impossibly grew louder, more frantic. This was not a cry of annoyance. This was a cry of pure, primal need. Dante felt a jagged spike of grief mix with his rage. Leo's mother, Alessia, was gone. Killed 6 months ago, just after Leo's birth in a blast of fire and steel meant for him. Alessia would have known what to do. She would have smiled and sung a soft tune in her Sicilian dialect, and the world would have been right. But Alessia was gone, and Dante was left holding the only piece of her that remained, and he was failing. The other passengers in the hushed cabin were trying and failing to be subtle. A senator from Massachusetts was pointedly reading The Economist, his brow furrowed in exaggerated concentration. A former Hollywood starlet, famous for a rehab stint, was whispering loudly to her companion about people who can't afford a private jet. "He must be in pain," the actress hissed loud enough for Dante to hear. "They should sedate him, or the baby." Dante's head turned slowly, his eyes the color of cold steel locked onto hers. "Signorina," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried farther than a shout, "if you do not close your mouth, I will have Marco close it for you. Permanently." The actress turned white. Silence, save for Leo's desperate wails, descended once more. Dante closed his eyes, pressing the bridge of his nose. He was taking his son to Sicily to be baptized in the same church as his grandfather. It was meant to be a pilgrimage, a way to connect the boy to roots his mother would have cherished. Instead, it was a disaster. Just behind, the silk curtain, separating first class from the mundane world of premium economy, Claire Jensen was trying to pretend she was asleep. It was impossible. She too was running from a life in Ohio, from an ex-husband named Richard, whose charm had curdled into a possessive, dangerous rage. She was running to a new life, a vague promise from a distant cousin in Rome, with her 3-year-old daughter Maya asleep on her lap. Maya, thankfully, was a champion sleeper. She was curled up, her breath smelling of apple juice, clutching a worn-out bunny. But the sound of the crying baby was jangling Claire's nerves. It was not just the noise. It was the quality of the cry. She had been a labor and delivery nurse before Richard had convinced her to quit. She knew every shade of a baby's cry. This was not colic. This was not a wet diaper. This was not ear pressure. This was the frantic, piercing cry of a baby who was starving. She had watched the flight attendants march back and forth. She had seen the expensive formula, the designer bottles. She had seen the father, a man who radiated danger like a high-voltage wire, pass the baby to his thuggish companion. They were doing everything wrong. They were bouncing him, patting him, offering him cold rubber. Claire shifted. Maya mumbled in her sleep. Claire's own body ached. Her breasts were heavy and sore, a painful reminder of her own body's rhythms. She was still nursing Maya, though she was trying to wean her. The physical discomfort was a familiar, unwelcome companion. The baby's cry hitched, turning into a desperate, gasping shriek. Claire's heart cracked. It was a physical reaction. Her milk let down a hot, tingling rush of useless nurture. She looked at her own sleeping daughter, safe and warm. Then she looked through the gap in the curtain. She saw the father's profile, his jaw tight, his knuckles white, as he gripped the armrest. He looked like a man about to break, or more accurately, a man about to break someone else. It's none of your business, Claire, she told herself. You have your own problems. You are running from a monster. Do not walk into the den of another one. But the baby cried. That terrible, hopeless, starving sound. Before she even knew what she was doing, before she could list the 1,000 reasons why it was a suicidally stupid idea, Claire Jensen unbuckled her seatbelt. She gently lifted Maya's sleeping head, slid out from under her, and tucked the airline blanket around her daughter's shoulders. She stood up, her cheap jeans and worn-out sneakers, a stark contrast to the plush surroundings she was about to enter. She took a deep breath, tasting the metallic fear on her own tongue. Then she pushed aside the curtain and stepped into first class. The effect was instantaneous. The crying baby, the tense father, the hulking bodyguard, the annoyed passengers, all of it froze. A nobody had breached the perimeter. Marco was on his feet in a microsecond. His hand was inside his jacket. His body was a wall of muscle. Back to your seat. Now. Please, Claire said, her voice shaking but clear. She directed her words not to the bodyguard, but to the man in the suit. The man holding the baby. Please, I can help. I know what's wrong. Dante Salvatore looked up. His eyes raked over her. He saw the faded t-shirt, the exhaustion in her eyes, the lack of a wedding ring, and the faint, unmistakable stain of baby food on her shoulder. He saw, in short, nothing. No one can help, Dante said. His voice was final. Go. He's starving, Claire said, taking another step. Marco moved to intercept her, placing a heavy hand on her shoulder. You heard him. No, you don't understand, Claire insisted, her voice rising in desperation. The baby heard her, and his cries seemed to pause just for a second, as if listening. He's starving, but not for that. She pointed at the rejected bottle. He needs a mother. Dante's face darkened. His mother is dead. The words were flat, a statement of fact, brutal and cold. I know, Claire Claire whispered, though she had not known. "I am so sorry. But biologically he needs what's in the bottle, but he won't take it from the bottle. He needs comfort." She stopped. How could she say this? The world had stopped. The engine hum was the only sound now that the baby had paused, his little chest heaving with gasps. "What?" Dante's voice was sharp. Claire met his eyes. They were the coldest eyes she had ever seen. But behind the cold, she saw it the same desperation she felt. The desperation of a parent who would do anything to make the pain stop. She took a breath and made the unthinkable offer. "I'm a mother," she said, her voice dropping, as if sharing a secret. "My own child is just back there." She gestured over her shoulder. "I'm still nursing. My body, it's ready." The actress in 4D gasped. The senator's newspaper lowered. Claire locked her gaze on Dante. "He's starving. He won't take the bottle. But I think he'll take me. Please, let me feed your son." The silence that followed her words was more profound than the baby's screams had been. It was a vacuum, sucking the air from the cabin. Dante Salvatore stared at Claire as if she had just sprouted a second head. His mind, which moved at the speed of a stock market ticker, tried to process the audacity. This woman, this peasant, had walked into his space, past his security, and offered him what? An intimacy so profound, so base, that it was reserved for wives and wet nurses from the 18th century. Marco was the first to react. "Signorina, you are insane. Go before I call the air marshal." "She is not insane," Dante said, his voice dangerously quiet. He was looking at his son. Leo, who had been momentarily distracted by the new voice, was gearing up for a new assault. His face was starting to crumple. "You," Dante said, his gaze snapping back to Claire. "You would do this for a stranger." Claire felt a hot flush of embarrassment. "I would do it for a baby," she corrected him. "He's in pain. I'm a nurse. Or I was. I know that cry. Please, it's just milk." It was not just milk. It was a F-350 of a social taboo, and she had just driven it straight through the first-class cabin. The flight attendant, Sarah, hurried over. "Ma'am, please, you need to return to your seat. We can handle this." "You cannot handle this." Claire snapped her own fear and exhaustion, making her bold. "You have been handling this for an hour, and he's turning blue. He's going to make himself sick." She turned back to Dante, her hands clasped in front of her. "I don't want your money. I don't want anything. I am a mother with a full breast of milk that is currently going to waste. Your son is hungry. It is the simplest, most logical solution in the world." Dante Salvatore lived in a world of complex, illogical solutions, a world of shell companies, hidden loyalties, and blood feuds. He had not encountered simple or logical in a decade. He looked at this woman. She was plain, but her eyes were not. They were a clear, defiant blue. She was not intimidated. She was exasperated, as if he were the idiot. It was a novel experience. And Leo, his son was beginning to wail again, that thin, reedy sound that tore at the last remnants of Dante's soul. "You are American," he stated. "Yes, from Ohio. And you are healthy." It was not a question. It was an assessment. "Yes," Claire said, her cheeks burning. "I am not on any medication. I do not drink. I do not smoke. I am just a mum, like your wife was." The mention of Alessia was a misstep. She saw it in his eyes. The steel cooled to absolute zero. "Do not," he whispered, "speak of my wife. I'm sorry. I just mean as a mother. Please." Dante made a decision. He had made decisions that had cost men their lives with less information. This was, as she said, simple. Biological. "Marco," he commanded. "Boss, no. We don't know who she is. She could be anything. She is a solution. Dante said. He nodded to Claire, a short, sharp motion. Sit. He gestured to the seat, facing the one the Hollywood actress had been occupying before she'd moved in a huff. Claire practically fell into it. Her legs were shaking. Sarah, Dante called, his voice, now pure command. The flight attendant jumped. Bring blankets. 2. And a bottle of water. Aquapanna if you have it. Yes, signore. Immediately. Sarah returned, her hands full. She looked at Claire with a mixture of awe and horror. She handed her the blankets. Turn around, Dante ordered Sarah. What? Turn around, all of you. His voice swept the cabin. The senator's newspaper went up like a shield. The actress fumbled with her eye mask. Marco reluctantly turned his back, standing in the aisle to block the view from the rest of the plane. They were in their own private world. Just Dante, Claire, and the now gasping baby. Give him to me, Claire said softly. Dante looked at his son, his expression unreadable. He had not let anyone hold Leo but himself, Marco, and a professional background-checked nanny back in New York. To hand his son, his heir, to this complete stranger, it was a violation of every security protocol he lived by. But Leo cried. Slowly, as if handing over a priceless, unstable explosive, Dante Salvatore passed his son across the small table. Claire took him. Her movements were practiced, sure. She did not take him awkwardly like Marco. She did not hold him stiffly like Dante. She settled him into the crook of her arm, her body a natural cradle. She draped one of the blankets over her shoulder. It's okay, Piccolino, she murmured. A word she'd picked up from an Italian cooking show. It's okay, I know. She did not look at Dante. This was not for him. She shielded herself with the blanket, unclipped her bra, and guided the baby. There was a moment of frantic snuffling, searching a tiny whimper of frustration. And then silence. A profound, absolute, and miraculous silence. The only sound was the soft, rhythmic suckling of a contented child. Claire let out a breath she felt like she had been holding since she left Ohio. The relief was so total, so physical, that she felt lightheaded. She looked down at the baby in her arms. He was beautiful. Dark, downy hair, long eyelashes, resting on a chubby cheek. He was feeding with a desperation that broke her heart. He had been starving. She looked up. Dante Salvatore was watching her. His face was a mask of stone, but his eyes were raw. He was not looking at her. He was looking at his son, seeing him peaceful for the first time since his mother died. He's beautiful, Claire whispered, her voice thick. Dante did not answer. He just watched. He watched this strange, brave woman from Ohio feed his child from her own body. He was a man of transactions. He understood debts. He had just incurred one that he could never, ever repay. My name is Claire, she said into the silence. Claire Jensen. Dante, he replied. His voice was rough. Dante Salvatore. The name meant nothing to her. It was just a name, an old Italian name. And this is Leo, Dante said, his voice softening for the first time as he looked at his son. Leonardo Salvatore. Leo, Claire repeated, smiling down at the baby. Hello, Leo. You gave your papa a scare. Leo's eyes were closed, his hand fisted in Claire's t-shirt. He was in heaven. Dante watched them, the primal sacred image of mother and child, a woman who was not his wife, a child who was his. The intimacy of the act was staggering. It was more intimate than sex. It was life. You are a nurse, he stated. I was. I'm in transition. I'm moving to Rome, to start over. Running, he said. Claire's gaze snapped up, her blue eyes sharp. What? You are running? From what? That's none of your business. You are feeding my son, Dante said, his logic irrefutable. You have made yourself my business. Claire bristled. The post-rescue adrenaline was fading, and she was realizing the vulnerability of her position. She was in a metal tube 30,000 feet in the air with a man who looked like he belonged on a most wanted poster, and she was lactating for him. "I'm running from a bad marriage," she said, her voice tight. A man who didn't know when to let go. "Richard," Dante said. Claire froze. "How did you know his name?" "I did not," Dante said. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, so faint it was barely there. "But I do now. This Richard, he is in Ohio. I don't know where he is, and I don't want to. I'm here with my daughter, Maya. We're going to be safe in Rome." "Safe?" Dante repeated the word as if it were a foreign concept. "There is no safe in Rome, not for a woman alone with a child." "I have a cousin," Claire said defensively. "A cousin." Dante dismissed the idea with a wave of his hand. "And this cousin will protect you from a man who doesn't know when to let go." Claire had no answer. Her cousin was a part-time art student who lived in a tiny apartment. She was, Claire suddenly realized, completely and terrifyingly alone. Leo finished. His belly was full. He was milk-drunk, his mouth open, his breathing deep and even. He was for the first time on the flight completely asleep. Claire gently burped him, her hand rubbing his back. She adjusted her clothing under the blanket, the physical relief profound. "Here," she said, holding the sleeping baby out to Dante. Dante looked at his son, then at her. He did not take him. "No, he is content. You will hold him until we land." "But my daughter, Maya, she's back there." "Marco," Dante called. The bodyguard turned his face, a mask of professional neutrality, though his eyes widened at the sight of the sleeping baby. "Go to the woman's seat. 12E, there is a child, Maya. You will sit in the seat next to her. You will watch her. If she wakes, you will entertain her. You will not let her out of your sight. Go." Marco looked like he wanted to argue. He looked from the sleeping baby to his boss. Then he nodded. "Yes, boss." He lumbered down the aisle, a grizzly bear sent to babysit a bunny. Claire watched him go, horrified. "You can't just send that man to sit with my daughter." "I can," Dante said. "He is the most capable man I know. Your daughter is now the safest person on this airplane. Safer even than you." Claire looked at him, truly processing the power in his statement. "You," Dante continued, "will sit here, with my son. You will have a drink, you will eat, and you will tell me everything about this Richard." Claire opened her mouth to argue, to demand to go back to her daughter. But she was trapped by the sleeping baby in her arms, trapped by the terrifying man in front of her, and trapped by the sudden chilling realization that by solving one problem, she had just created 1,000 more. The rest of the flight passed in a surreal, quiet bubble. The first-class cabin, having witnessed the drama and its bizarre silent resolution, retreated into its own world. The senator went to sleep. The actress put on headphones and pretended to meditate. Flight attendant Sarah, at Dante's quiet request, delivered a first-class meal to Claire, who ate the lobster thermidor and sipped the aquapanna with one hand, her other arm securely holding the sleeping Leo. It was the strangest, most luxurious, and most terrifying meal of her life. Dante did not eat. He just watched. His mind, which was usually occupied with logistics, rival families, and the cold arithmetic of power, was now focused entirely on the woman in front of him. Claire Jensen, nurse, from Ohio, fled a bad marriage, has a daughter, Maya. These were the facts. But Dante Salvatore dealt in the spaces between the facts. He observed her hands. They were strong, capable, but the nails were short, bitten, a sign of anxiety. She wore no jewelry save for a faint, pale line on her left ring finger where a wedding band used to be. She was not a plain woman, he decided. She was a woman who had been deliberately hiding. Her clothes were a size too large, her hair a nondescript brown pulled back in a simple tie. She was a woman trying to be invisible, and yet she had walked through the curtain. She had confronted him. This Richard. Dante said, his voice low, breaking a long silence. The engine hum was the only other sound. He hit you. Claire's fork clattered against the porcelain plate. That is none of your concern. You made yourself my concern when you touched my son, Dante repeated. He hit you. Claire looked down. He was controlling. He liked things his way. He was a successful man, a finance guy. He worked for a firm Wechsler Capital. Very important. He did not like to be told no. So you told him no, Dante surmised. I told him enough, Claire whispered. He pushed Maya. She fell. It was an accident, he said. But she hit her head on the coffee table. And I looked at him and I realized. He wasn't sorry she fell. He was angry she had been in his way. Claire's hand tightened on the armrest. I took her to the hospital. I packed one bag. I emptied our joint account. I bought these tickets. And I ran. Dante was silent. He understood this. Not the emotional part, perhaps, but the logistics. The flight. The stolen money. The desperate act of self-preservation. It was a strategy. A weak one, but a strategy nonetheless. He will find you, Dante said. No. He thinks I went to my sister's in Oregon. I made sure. I left a trail. He won't look in Rome. He will, Dante said with absolute certainty. A man like that. A controlling man. He does not see you as a person. He sees you as a possession. You stole his property, not just the money. You and the child. He will not stop. A cold spear of fear, more potent than anything she had felt before, pierced through Claire's exhaustion. How do you know? Dante leaned forward. The small table between them felt like a battlefield. Because I am a man like that, he said, his voice a hypnotic whisper. I understand possession. I understand what it is to have something mine taken from me. He was not talking about her. He was talking about Alessia. He was talking about the car bomb. He was talking about the 6 months of cold, silent rage that had fueled his every waking moment. Claire saw it then. He was not just a rich, arrogant passenger. He was grieving. He was a man consumed by a loss so profound it had burned away anything soft inside him. Anything except perhaps the tiny sleeping bundle in her arms. I am sorry, Claire said, and she meant it. I am sorry for your wife, and I am sorry for whatever makes you see the world that way. Dante Salvatore had not been seen by anyone in years. He was handled, he was managed, he was feared. But this Ohio nurse with her cheap t-shirt and her unwelcome insight, she saw him, and he did not like it. He leaned back, the mask of cold indifference sliding back into place. You have a stain on your shirt. Claire looked down, the tiny spot of baby food from Maya. Oh, right. My wife, Dante said, looking out the window at the dark expanse of the Atlantic. Alessia. She never had a stain on her. Ever. She was perfect, like a painting. Everything in its place. I bought her a villa in Sicily. I gave her everything, and she could not. Like you. Claire understood. Alicia had been a trophy, a beautiful, perfect painting. But a painting cannot nurse a starving child. She must have loved him very much, Claire said softly, stroking Leo's head. She did, Dante said, and she is dead because of it. Because of me. It was a confession, a crack in the marble facade. He had said it to no one, not to his priest, not to his consigliere. But he said it to this woman. Why? Because she had saved his son. Because she held a piece of his soul in her arms. Because, in the pressurized cabin 30,000 feet above the world, the normal rules didn't apply. "We are all running from something, Mr. Salvatore," Claire said. "But you seem to be running straight into a fight." "It is not a fight," Dante said. "It is a war. And I am going to win." He was going to Rome, his wife's home city, to find the man who had ordered her death. A rival. A Russian pig named Viktor Orlov, who thought he could muscle in on the Salvatore shipping routes. Dante was not just going to Rome to baptize his son. He was going to Rome to burn his enemy to the ground. And he had just brought his only son, his only weakness, into the war zone. This, he realized, was why the baby's cries had undone him. It was not just the sound. It was the guilt, the crushing, suffocating guilt that he had made his son an orphan, and now he was parading him as a target. "When we land," Dante said, his voice all business now, "you will give me your information." "What?" "Your cousin's address, your phone number." "I don't think that's a good idea." "It is not a request," Dante said. "You have done me a service I cannot repay. But I will." "I don't want to be repaid," Claire said. "I just want to be left alone. I want to take my daughter and disappear." "You cannot," Dante said. "Men like your Richard, men like me. We do not allow people to disappear. You are on my radar now, Claire Jensen. You and your daughter Maya." This was not a comfort. This was a threat. "You will give me your information," he repeated, "and in return I will make one phone call, and your ex-husband Richard will be audited by the IRS. His firm, Wexler Capital, will be investigated for fraud. His assets will be frozen. He will be so busy trying to save his own skin, he will not have time to look for you. He will not have the money." Claire's mouth fell open. "You can't just do that." Dante looked at her, and his smile was the most terrifying thing she had ever seen. "I can," he said. "And I will. It is a small price to pay." "A price for what?" "For Leo," Dante said, nodding at his son. "You fed him. Now I will feed you. This is how the world works, Claire. You do a favor. You receive a favor. We are now bound." Claire looked down at the sleeping baby. He was so innocent, so perfect. She had saved him, and in doing so, she had just damned herself. She had escaped her cage in Ohio, only to fly directly into the arms of a man who owned a much, much larger one. The sun began to rise over the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of bloody orange and purple. The plane began its slow descent toward Rome. The bubble was about to burst. The chaos of landing at Rome's Fiumicino airport was a stark, cold splash of reality. The fasten seatbelt sign pinged, and the magic pressurized bubble of the first-class cabin dissolved. Leo mercifully slept through the entire landing, his little body heavy and warm in Claire's arms. As the plane taxied to the gate, Claire felt a growing sense of panic. She had to give him back. Dante was all business. He was on his phone before the wheels stopped speaking in rapid, hushed Italian. "Si la villa. Prepara la stanza del bambino. E trova tutto quello che sai su un uomo di nome Richard. Wexler Capital, Ohio." He snapped his phone shut just as the plane docked. Marco reappeared looking ruffled. "The girl?" Dante asked. "Asleep," Marco grunted. "She woke up once. I gave her some cookies. She called me Mr. Grumpy." A flicker of amusement in Dante's eyes. "Good. Get our bags. We are deplaning. Now." "Sir." Sarah, the flight attendant, hurried over, her face bright with professional gratitude. "Thank you so much, Signore Salvatore, for your patience. And you, Ma'am, you were a lifesaver." Claire just nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She will be deplaning with me, Dante informed Sarah. Oh, but her daughter, her seat, in premium economy. Marco will retrieve the girl, Dante said. Come. He stood. Claire, clutching Leo, stood with him. The other first-class passengers filed out pointedly, not looking at the strange tableau. Dante waited. Marco returned, carrying a still-sleeping Maya in one arm, and Claire's worn-out carry-on bag in the other. Maya, who normally fought sleep, was utterly limp in the big man's grasp. He's good with her, Claire murmured, astonished. He has 7 nieces, Dante said, as if this explained everything. They walked out of the jet bridge. Claire felt like a fraud, walking with this man who was flanked by a bodyguard carrying her child. People stared. They saw a powerful, beautiful family. A man, his wife, his 2 children, his security. They did not see the truth, a Mafia boss, a hostage, a refugee, and a child. At the baggage claim, Dante's people materialized. 2 men in dark, identical suits. They did not speak. They simply took the luggage tags from Marco. Claire, Dante said. This was it. She handed him the sleeping baby. The transfer was quick. Leo, sensing the loss of her warmth and scent, began to stir his face, puckering. No, 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 Dante murmured, his voice surprisingly soft. Shh, Leone mio. We are home. Claire felt a sharp, painful emptiness in her arms. Marco, Dante ordered. Give the woman her child. Marco gently passed Maya to Claire. Maya woke, blinked in the bright terminal light, and buried her face in Claire's neck. Mummy, where's Mr. Grumpy? He's right here, sweetie, Claire whispered, her heart hammering. Now, Dante said, turning to her. He was once again the cold man from the plane. The brief moment of vulnerability was gone. He pulled a pen, a thick gold Mont Blanc, from his jacket and took a cocktail napkin from his pocket. The address. Dante, please. Mr. Salvatore, I can't. I don't want your help. That favor you mentioned, I don't want it. I do not care what you want, he said, his voice flat. I am not a man who leaves a debt unpaid. It is untidy. He held the pen out to her. The address, or I will have my men find it, and they will be conspicuous. Your cousin will not appreciate it. Neither will her neighbors, or her landlord. It was a checkmate. He knew it. Defeated, Claire scribbled the address in Trastevere on the flimsy napkin. He took it, read it, and nodded. Good. My driver will take you. A black Maserati is waiting. It will be... No, Claire said, finding a last frayed thread of defiance. No, I'm taking the train. The Leonardo Express. Like I planned. I will not get in a car with you. She expected him to argue, to force her. Instead, he studied her for a long, uncomfortable moment. The cogs were turning. He was re-evaluating. As you wish, he said finally. You choose the hard way. I admire that. It is stupid, but I admire it. He tucked the napkin into his pocket. Marco, give her the card. Marco produced a business card. It was thick, black, ridiculously expensive. It had one word on it, Salvatore, and a phone number. This is not my number, Dante said. It is the number for my ufficio, my office. When your cousin's apartment proves to be a hovel, when your ex-husband's lawyers find a way to freeze the money you stole when you are hungry, you will call this number. I won't, Claire said. You will, Dante replied. He looked down at Maya, and his expression softened by a fraction. She is a beautiful girl. It would be a shame if she had to suffer for her mother's pride. He turned. His men who had the bags were already moving. Marco, holding Leo, fell in step behind him. In seconds, the Salvatore entourage was swallowed by the crowd, moving with a silent, terrifying efficiency and disappearing through a private exit. Claire was left standing alone, holding her daughter, her carry-on, and a black business card that felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She was also being watched. Across the terminal by a Cafe Nero, a man in a rumpled suit lowered his phone. He had been watching the exchange. He had not been watching Dante. He had been watching her. He hit a speed dial number. A voice on the other end answered. "Mr. Peterson, it's me. You were right. Your wife, Claire. She wasn't going to Oregon. I've got eyes on her, right now, at Fiumicino, Rome, Italy. Yeah, she looks scared, and she's got the kid." The man, a private investigator hired by Richard Peterson, lifted his phone and snapped a picture. A grainy, long-distance shot of Claire holding Maya, looking lost. "Yeah," the PI said, sending the photo. "She's alone. Looks like she doesn't have a clue in the world. This will be an easy one, Mr. Peterson. I'll have her for you by the end of the week." Claire did not call the number. She took the Leonardo Express, a fast, clean train that rocketed her and a sleepy Maya from the airport to Rome's main station termini. From there, a taxi, a terrifying fast-talking driver, and 30 of her dwindling euros got them to the Trastevere address. The apartment was not just a hovel. It was a fifth-floor walk-up that smelled of garlic, damp stone, and cat urine. Her cousin Maria, a third-generation Italian-American on a find-herself journey, was sweet but useless. She had forgotten they were coming. "Oh my God, Claire, you're here!" She had shrieked, her bright pink hair a stark contrast to the ancient peeling paint in the hallway. "I thought you were coming next week." The room Maria had for them was a mattress on the floor of a tiny alcove, separated from the kitchen by a beaded curtain. For 2 days, Claire and Maya lived on stale bread, cheap pasta, and the sound of Maria's band, practicing experimental jazz. It was not a new start. It was a new circle of hell. Claire tried to find work. She went to hospitals, clinics, and private nursing agencies. Her American qualifications were useless without a mountain of paperwork, translated documents, and a permesso di soggiorno, a permit to stay, which she did not have. Her money, the money she had stolen from Richard, was disappearing. On the 3rd day, she went to an ATM, and the screen flashed a brutal final message. Card declined. She called her bank in Ohio, a terrible, expensive international call from a payphone. "Yes, Mrs. Peterson," a bland voice informed her. "A hold has been placed on the account. It seems Mr. Peterson filed a report of suspected fraud. Yes, all assets are frozen, pending an investigation." Dante Salvatore's words echoed in her ears. He will not have the money. But it was not Richard's money that was frozen. It was hers. Richard had struck first. Dante's favor had not materialized. Or perhaps this was the investigation Dante had started, and she was just collateral damage. She was ruined. She walked back to the apartment in a daze. Maria was out. Maya was asleep on the lumpy mattress, her face smudged with dirt. They had eaten the last of the pasta for lunch. There was no dinner. Claire sat on the cold tile floor. She was a refugee, a failure. She had dragged her daughter across the world to starve in a cold foreign apartment. She pulled her wallet from her bag. Her fingers fumbled past her useless bank cards, her expired nursing ID, and touched paper. Thick, black, Salvatore. She looked at the phone. She looked at Maya. It was not a choice. It was an inevitability. She dialed the number. A crisp female voice answered in Italian. "Ufficio Salvatore." "Hello." Claire's voice was a dry croak. "Hello. My name is Claire Jensen. I was on a flight with Mr. Salvatore. He told me to call." There was a pause. A keyboard clacked. "Ah, Signorina Jensen. Yes, we have been expecting your call." The relief in the voice was strange. "Please hold." Claire held for 10 seconds. "Claire." It was his voice. Dante. Not on a cell phone. On a landline, clear and strong, as if he were in the next room. He froze the account. Claire whispered, the humiliation burning her throat. Richard, he did it. I have no money. My daughter, she hasn't... We can't... Where are you? He asked. Not I told you so. Not I'm sorry. Just a simple logistical question. The apartment, in Trastevere. Stay there. Do not leave. A car is on its way. The line went dead. 20 minutes later, a black Maserati Quattroporte, the same model that had been offered at the airport, slid to a stop in the narrow cobblestone street. It was as out of place as a spaceship. The driver, not Marco, but a man, just as imposing, got out, walked to her building, and simply waited in the entryway. Claire, her heart a leaden weight, woke Maya. Get your coat, sweetie. We're going on a ride. A ride, Mummy with Mr. Grumpy. No, sweetie, someone new. She grabbed their one bag. She did not leave a note for Maria. The ride was silent. The driver did not speak. They left the charming, chaotic center of Rome and drove south onto the ancient Appian Way. The city fell away, replaced by rolling hills, ancient ruins, and sprawling gated estates. The car turned onto a long gravel drive lined with cypress trees, so tall they blocked out the sun. They passed through a set on iron gates that looked 1,000 years old, but were reinforced with modern steel and monitored by security cameras. The car stopped in front of a villa. It was not a house. It was a palace, a sprawling terracotta-roofed building that looked like it had been standing since the time of the Caesars. It was surrounded by acres of manicured gardens, fountains, and olive groves. Dante Salvatore was standing on the front steps waiting. He was not in a suit. He was wearing dark trousers and a simple white linen shirt open at the collar. He looked like a Roman god. And he was holding Leo. Claire got out of the car holding Maya's hand. Maya hid behind Claire's leg, intimidated by the sheer scale of the place. Welcome, Dante said. His voice was not cold, it was neutral. To the Villa Salvatore. It's a house, Claire stammered. It is my home, Dante said, and for now it is yours. I can't stay here. Where will you go? He countered. Back to the hovel, back to Ohio, where your husband is waiting to put you in jail for fraud. He had her. He knew he had her. Come, he said. Let me show you. He led them inside. The interior was not cold and modern. It was filled with priceless antiques, Renaissance paintings, and thick Persian rugs. It was opulent, but it was also dark. The windows were tall, but heavy velvet drapes blocked much of the light. A woman in a severe black dress, her grey hair pulled into a tight bun, was waiting in the foyer. This is Signora Bianchi, Dante said. She is Leo's Tata, his nanny. She will assist you. Signora Bianchi looked at Claire with open disdain. She saw a common American woman, an interloper. Dante, Claire said, stopping. What am I doing here? I am not your guest. No, he agreed. You are not, I told you. I have a debt. I am repaying it. By kidnapping me, by protecting you, he corrected her. Your husband has hired a private investigator, a man named Frank Russo. He photographed you at the airport. He has been following you. He was preparing to retrieve you and your daughter. Claire's blood ran cold. How do you know that? Because, Dante said, stepping closer, Mr. Russo is currently a guest of mine in a much smaller villa. He is explaining his mistakes. Claire felt sick. What did you do? I am solving your problem, Claire. The problem you are not capable of solving yourself. The man Richard will be handled. The investigation into your account will be stopped. The money will be returned. You will be safe. Safe, Claire repeated his word from the plane. In your cage, a gilded cage, Dante said, a small smile playing on his lips. "It is better than the alternative." He gestured to Signora Bianchi. "Show Miss Jensen and her daughter to the guest wing. Get them clothes, food, whatever they need." "And me?" Claire asked, her voice small. "What is my job? Am I the new nanny?" Dante looked at her. He looked at the hard, disapproving face of Signora Bianchi. He looked at Leo, who was starting to fuss in his arms, his little face searching. "Signora Bianchi is traditional," Dante said. "She does not believe in comfort. She believes in schedules. Leo does not appreciate her schedules. He has been crying since you left." He held the baby out to Claire. "Your job, Miss Jensen, is to do what you did on the plane. Your job is to be his mother, until I no longer require your services." Claire looked at the baby. Leo's eyes found hers. A tiny gummy smile spread across his face. He recognized her. She took him. He snuggled into her neck, content. Dante Salvatore watched the exchange. He had just handed this woman his son. He had just installed her in his home. He had just told her he was handling her ex-husband. He was a man who understood possession. "Yes," he said, more to himself than to her. "You are the new nanny. You and your daughter will live here. You will be safe. You will want for nothing. And you will never be alone again." Claire Jensen, the struggling single mum from Ohio, looked around the cavernous, beautiful and terrifying marble foyer. She was holding the son of a Mafia boss. Her own daughter was clinging to her leg, and she realized the last terrible truth. He did not just mean she would be protected. He meant she would be watched. She was a prisoner. Life at the Villa Salvatore was a disorienting dream of luxury and paranoia. Claire and Maya lived in a gilded cage, wanting for nothing. Dante had solved her problems, the money was back, and the PI had vanished. Claire's role became clear when she won a battle of wills against the stern nanny, Signora Bianchi, over Leo's care. From then on, Claire was Leo's unofficial mother, and the baby thrived. Her own daughter Maya blossomed, forming an unlikely, adorable bond with Marco, her Mr. Grumpy bodyguard. Dante himself was a watchful absence. He would disappear for days, then return, his eyes tired. In a rare moment of vulnerability, he confided in Claire. He spoke of his murdered wife Alessia and the man responsible, a brutal Russian rival named Viktor Orlov. "I am going to end him," Dante stated, his voice hollow. He was in Rome not just to grieve, but to wage a war. He was unaware that his enemy had just found a new weapon. Dante believed he had handled Claire's ex-husband, Richard. But Richard was a desperate, cornered rat. His finance firm had been laundering money for one man, Viktor Orlov. With nothing left to lose, Richard made a call. He told Orlov all about Dante Salvatore's new weakness, the American nanny, and her daughter, who he was protecting like family. The war came to their door during a statement garden party Dante hosted. While Dante showed off his strength, Claire, on display in a bespoke silk dress, felt a chill. She spotted a fake waiter watching Maya. "Marco!" She screamed, but it was too late. The man lunged, grabbing Maya and sprinting for a service van. The van smashed through the gates, leaving Claire screaming on the gravel, her daughter gone. Dante stood beside her, his face a mask of apocalyptic rage. Viktor Orlov had just made his move. The villa was shattered. Orlov called, demanding his weapons shipment, Dante's entire war in exchange for Maya. Dante roared, trapped between avenging his dead wife and saving Claire's child. He was ready to sacrifice Maya for his empire until he saw Claire's utter, broken defeat. Remembering the plane, he made the unthinkable choice. He agreed to the trade. "You are coming with me," he told Claire, secretly arming himself. At the port, Orloff held Maya. With him was Richard Clare's ex, the one who sold them out. Maya ran to Clare's arms. The trade was complete, but Dante's deal was a lie. He signaled a crane operator who obliterated Orloff and his car with a 50-ton magnet. Richard left Sniveling was spared at Clare's plea and banished. His enemy dead, Dante faced Clare. He admitted she had saved him, not just his son. "Let's go home, Clare," he said. It wasn't an order, it was an acknowledgement. A new, dangerous bond had been sealed in blood and steel, and that's the story. But is it the end, or just the beginning? Clare traded one cage for another, but in Dante's world, a gilded cage comes with a very different kind of power. She saved his son, and in doing so, she saved the man. But what happens when a mafia boss owes you his life? What happens when you become the one thing he is unwilling to lose? If you were on the edge of your seat, if you felt that tension, that what would you do? Moment, then do me a favor. Hit that like button. It tells the algorithm you have great taste. Share this video with someone who needs a story that will make their heart pound. And most importantly, subscribe to this channel. We are just getting started, and you do not want to miss the next chapter in this dark, dangerous world.